Alright, it's time to finally unveil my dual sword Reaper build, and we'll be using a combination of traits you don't often see featured in build guides. But boy, do they work. You'll have high enough burst damage to dispatch regular mobs quickly, and if you're facing anything tougher, your stacks of bleeding will decimate whatever health your enemy has left. Our build also has so much crowd control that any champion in Heart of Thorns will just stand there, awestruck, while you casually take them down. I won't be using Jade protocols in the footage to show you what the base build is capable of, but if you choose to stack those on top, you'll literally become the avatar of death. Enough talk, let's get to the traits and start with Spite, which will ensure you can maintain 25 stacks of might and inflict vulnerability on your enemies so that you can hit them even harder. And that's only from the minor traits. Our major traits will enable us to spam chill, stack even more vulnerability and provide us with quickness whenever we fear a foe, which we will not only do with Shroud 3 this time around, but also with Sword 5 for near permanent quickness. Our second trait line will most likely come as a surprise as we're going with Death Magic, which has a somewhat unique mechanic called Carapace. Whenever we enter or maintain Shroud, when an enemy dies or when we inflict conditions, we'll gain up to 30 stacks of this buff, which will do various things for us. When we enter Shroud, we'll gain extra life force based on our current stacks, and each stack will also provide us with additional power and condition damage. And as long as we're above 10 stacks, we'll pulse protection and take 10% reduced damage. And to top it all off, for every 3 seconds we can maintain Shroud, we will lose one condition. No other elite spec in the game benefits from being able to inflict chill as much as a Reaper does. We'll passively increase chill duration and also inflict a debuff whenever we fear an enemy, which we'll be doing a lot. Whenever we critically strike a chilled foe, we'll cause an explosion that not only damages, but also chills adjacent foes, and we get extra stacks of might and some life force for simply striking an enemy suffering from the debuff. The Grandmaster trait is what makes this all come together, as Deathly Chill will inflict 4 stacks of bleeding every time we chill a foe. In other words, every time you critically strike a chilled foe, you'll inflict bleeding all around you, and every time you cast Fear or hit an enemy under 50% HP, you'll do the same. And thanks to Relic of the Reaper, you'll chill nearby foes every time you use a shout, which will be 4 out of 5 utility skills we'll be bringing along. Our healing skill will be Your Soul is Mine, and we're bringing Suffer, which inflicts chill, vulnerability and transfers conditions to our enemies, as well as Your All Weaklings, which will grant us might and inflict weakness as 2 of our utility skills. Our third utility skill, Spectral Grasp, is not a shout, but will inflict chill regardless, and will pull up to 5 targets in a 1200 range towards us. Our elite skill is Chill to the Bone, which is a nuke that freezes enemies and grants us boons on a very short 30-second cooldown. I've tried multiple gear combinations, but I've settled on Celestial gear with Great Runes, as bleeding will be our main damaging condition. If you don't have a Celestial set, Vipers will do just fine, and you could replace the runes with Trapper, Adventurer or even Necromancer. In my weapons, I'm going with a Sigil of Bursting for the extra condition damage and Earth to inflict even more stacks of bleeding faster. But these are pretty flexible as well. If you don't use the Rune of the Crate for example, then a Sigil of Agony might be a good replacement. Or if you're not using Jadebot protocols, having a Sigil of Speed will ensure you have permanent swiftness in the open world. And I already discussed the Relic of the Reaper and its synergy with our selected traits. The playstyle itself is rather simple, as you can basically cast every skill off cooldown, but it pays to know what benefits you get from each one. We already went over the utility skills, which will buff you, inflict chill, bleeding and vulnerability on your enemies, and in the case of Spectral Grasp, pull them towards you. When it comes to your sword, except for your auto attack chain, every skill can be cast twice. The first time to deal damage and gain minor benefits. The second time will see you sacrifice some health for even greater effects. Your auto attacks will heal you every time you strike an enemy, and the third skill in the chain will also chill them, which means even more vulnerability and bleeding. Sword 2 deals a good amount of damage, and even more so to any enemy under 50% HP, so focus on using this attack when finishing off mobs. Sword 3 will serve you for 2 purposes. When running around, you can cast this twice for a massive 1800 range dash in total, and if you need some extra healing, this will be the skill you want to revert to. Sword 4 deals good damage, will let you siphon health, and is yet another way to inflict chill, and Sword 5 inflicts fear, which will help you maintain quickness. The only time you want to follow some semblance of a rotation is when you're in Reaper Shroud. You can double tap Shroud 3 for stability and fear, which means more quickness uptime. And you want to always use Shroud 5 before Shroud 4, so that your roll finisher shoots out chilling bolts. While in instance content, you might want to ignore Shroud 2, don't underestimate what it can do for you in the open world. It's another 600 range dash that also destroys projectiles, and counts as a leap finisher. So if you cast Shroud 2 in Shroud 5 Ice Field, you will get a Frost Aura, which reduces damage taken by another 10% and inflicts chill on any enemy that can land an attack on you. That's about it. You know the drill by now. Questions down below or on Discord, and click the like and subscribe buttons.